Hello and welcome to NoCB, a grand strategy podcast. This is episode 12 for March 11th, 2020. I am your host, TJ Hafer, and here as always, we have our panel, including Rose.
Hello.
Including Lamberts.
Hello there.
And including Father Loris.
Hello.
And we have 5 dev diaries to talk about today. It's some really interesting stuff, as well as the resumption of hostilities. That is the EU4 developer dev clash. I think we all were at least able to catch some of it, right?
Oh yeah,
It's
I watched it all.
yes.
Cool. So we'll get to that in a second. But as usual, we will go ahead and start with CK3. Which I need to fix here because OBS crashed right before I started recording. There we go. We got a dev diary today on government's vassal management, laws, and raiding, which is a lot to go over. Feudal contracts, succession laws, Vikings, lots of good stuff. What stuck out to you guys about this particular dev diary?
The salt in the comments.
There was a lot of salt in the comments.
So much.
That's, kind of the elephant in the room here is that there's not going to be an imperial government or an imperial succession type at launch. But what Meneth specifically said, friend of the show, our boy Meneth, is that they specifically decided not to port over the Byzantium mechanics from CK2 because they didn't think they were good enough. And he didn't say when, but he said if they revisit Byzantium in the future, they want to start over from scratch and do it properly, which, from my perspective, I like that answer a lot. What do you guys think?
Oh, yeah, same. Absolutely.
I would much rather wait and have a mechanic get added in later and have it be perfected than to have them put something in that just makes us all tear our hair out and they have to fix it again later anyway.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that they did with the trade republics and playing as a horde.
Yeah.
Yes,
If they can't do it justice
exactly.
on release, save it.
You mean Merchant
release it as an
Republics
update later.
and Nomads.
Merchant Republic. Nomads,
You've got too
that's
much
it.
EU4 in your brain.
Hordes and nomads are the same bloody thing. Come on.
For
Have you ever met a
CK2?
nomad that wasn't horde-like?
Yeah,
saying.
and I've heard a very similar sentiment expressed about hordes that no, we don't want to just bring over the CK2 horde mechanics and fix it later. We want to if again, this is an if, we do not have
It's a solid
confirmation
when.
that they will do this, but I would be willing to bet that it's going to be a when, not an if.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I
they
knew
want to
it-
start over and do it properly.
At PDXCon, when I talked with Black Ninja for a good while, one thing he was talking about with the Nomads is the fact that they kind of broke the system in CK2 because they were supposed to have land with no holdings. But the subholdings were part of each county, and the way that worked, it messed with the mechanics and created a lot of issues with coding. With CK3, the fact that all the baronies are visible on the map is actually going to make adding in nomads a lot better when they are able to devote that time to it, if they are able to. It was an if and a when possibility. There was no confirmation about it.
Right.
I'm just straight up going to assume it's a when.
Come
on.
I am.
It
But
definitely is going to be, yeah.
We don't need to keep, specifying, he said if and when. It's a when.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah.
Unless CK3 is somehow some massive disaster on launch. I doubt it.
I'm more trying to protect sources that may have said this to me and do not want it to be construed as a confirmation because their bosses would get mad at them for that.
Yes, that's why I was like, it's an if when.
TJ's part.
Yeah, at no point has a developer confirmed to me that they will be eventually adding nomads back into CK3, but come on.
Let's be fair.
Of course.
Come on is probably where we should go with this.
Or
exactly.
The same thing about Merchant Republics is the fact that they weren't happy with the way that trading posts and trade was done for Merchant Republics and CK2. And the Silk Road got added in much later, and they were much happier with how that worked. And so they're looking at that and inspiration from EU4 and Imperator trade for if and when they do add merchant republics in. So it would not be anything at all like what it is in CK2.
Here's the other interesting thing, speaking of republics, though, is that one of Meneth's answers he gave was republics and theocracies don't work well with the dynastic gameplay of CK3, which kind of indicates to me that maybe there won't be playable republics in CK3. Maybe that's just not something they want to focus on.
Or it would be
we never got
whatever.
playable. Yeah.
No, I think we probably will have playable republics at some point.
Well,
imagine.
For what they've shown with dynasties, we haven't seen a whole lot on it yet. But if you look into your history of Venice, Florence, Genoa, you could make that work with the families, but you'd have to have entirely different rewards, entirely different commands for your family members.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, there were republics like Amalfi and like Benevento where it basically became a dynastic realm sooner or later. Like, I mean, it was technically still a republic, but the leading candidate was always the chosen heir of the previous, doge or whatever. So I think something like that could definitely work. And especially now that like your dynasty and your house are a thing and that they could, maybe attach holdings to that. Similar to how CK2 the Republic worked, where you just kind of have some source of off-map income and troops if you don't own any land because someone else got elected doge. That could be interesting, I think.
I definitely don't think
maybe
we'll
you
ever...
could just...
Oh, go Lambert.
Yeah. I was saying, I don't think you really need like the family and dynastic mechanics, but at the same time, you could have it so that you just rename family to your business. Your...
Yeah.
Say you are the Republican leader of Venice, you are one of the potential doges. Instead of having all of your dynasty bonuses be tied to family, you could have them all tied to making your business and then all of the making the business better, and then making the other characters in your business, they would be the pseudo family members.
Yeah. Well, I think adoption, like adult adoption, was fairly common.
Oh yeah.
Like especially in merchant societies, right?
Yeah, I mean, bringing it full circle, if they ever do like implement a proper imperial government for Byzantium, the imperial house was adopting people all the time. I mean, we see that in Imperator, and that continued into the CK3 time period
They could also
in the Eastern Empire. So
try and base it off of the Medici family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's corporate family instead of a blood family.
Well, that's another one of those classic examples where it's like, was Florence technically a republic? Yes. Was it also kind of controlled by one dynasty for a long time? Also, yes. So, I'm not going crazy. The Medicis were Florence, right?
Yes,
Not
they were
Verona?
Florence.
Okay.
They were the ones who finally
That's
got the dome finished and all sorts of stuff.
Got it, yeah.
And then they ended up on the throne of France. Kind of.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. I mean, a lot of Republicans back in those days, they turned into kings more frequently than one would think.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or dukes. Sometimes they didn't pretend as high as a king, but yeah.
Oh, or they would become king, but they call themselves something else. Like
because Duke was originally like an affected or an appointed office, right? Like it didn't start out as a hereditary title. So I think if you were a powerful Republican family, you could probably just call yourself a duke, at least in the early Middle Ages. So
what do you guys think about the changes to the succession names?
I know we have some opinions about this. Do you want to start, Rose?
Sure. So, from an educational background, or my background's in education, and so one way I look at these games, which are based in history is how, accurate and how much they can teach someone in terms of like Age of Empires, Crusader Kings, both series and other games out there that aren't so steeped in fantasy, are more based in historical real life, are a great introduction to people finding new terms, history, and such. And I can understand some of the changes, such as changing it from Gavelkind to Partition, because it doesn't fully fit the whole Gavelkind. But the single heir, changing it from primogenitor to oldest child succession and ultimogenitor to youngest child succession.
And cognatic.
Yeah.
That part just feels like they're dumbing it down. And with the tooltips, they don't need to. Yeah. Because if you're like, what's primogenitor? You hover over it and it tells you oldest child succession. Oh, you learn a new term.
You had to hover over it every time, or at least I did. I had to hover over it every single time I changed to succession law. I've got over 1,000 hours in CK2, and I have never just, this is the one I need. Never happened. So on that front, I can totally understand it.
Oh, see,
I have,
but I've been
Gavelkind all the time, yeah.
But I played CK originally, which that one doesn't even give you any explanations about what any of the...
Jesus.
Learn Latin, scrubs.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. I liked the old names better just because I felt like it was more flavorful. Like it enhanced the feeling of being in the Middle Ages. Although I do agree with you, Rose, that changing Gavelkind to Partition makes sense because Gavelkind was a very specific succession form that specifically existed in a very specific place at a very specific time, and there were lots of other realms that used partition or partible succession throughout the period and throughout the world that would not fit the definition of like English Gavelkind. So it was that one I support. Yeah.
But primogenitor is primogenitor across the board, whether you're in Japan or you're in the UK.
Mind you, for the period in CK2's time period, succession laws were more of a mild suggestion.
Right.
more often than not.
There's
actually, blade is more important.
A really good video by CGP Grey where he talks about how the throne was passed along, and it wasn't even codified until after in Great Britain. It wasn't even in England. It wasn't codified until after the rebellion when William and Mary came back in, I think.
Yeah, it was a glorious revolution, I believe.
Right.
Before that, it was just kind of like, who do you name and who has the biggest army?
Who was closest to London at the time of death?
So here, another interesting thing here, though. Speaking of history, a lot of times what would actually happen, at least, especially in the early Middle Ages when the king died, is that like the leading nobles would kind of get together and they would barter and argue and decide on who the heir was going to be. I don't see elective succession here. Which might tie into another thing that I noticed, which is that I also don't see any technology requirements on these. So I'm wondering if they've done away with that completely, or if available succession laws, which is what the header says, is just the ones that you've unlocked so far.
And that I think it's the latter.
Yeah. But it is weird that they don't have any elective.
That
they
is
say
an odd
anything
one.
about that?
Well, they said about high partition succession that it was going to be like a late game kind of succession. So that's got to be something to do with technology, right?
Let's see. If you hold any elective titles, you'll be able to easily get to the election screen from here. But I don't think they said anything about being able to switch to elective succession. Yeah, they mentioned feudal elective and princely elective exist for the HRE. But why those wouldn't be available on the screen to change your succession type is something I'm unsure about.
It might be because they're looking at someone with tribal laws, because otherwise there wouldn't be partition there. So maybe if you are feudal, then instead of seeing partition types, you will instead see elective types.
Yeah, do we have a vexillology expert in chat who can tell us, based on these coat of arms, what country we're looking at? The bull makes me think that it's somewhere in Iberia, maybe.
But the Genoese cross makes me think Italy.
Yeah, I don't know.
That could be a lot of different crosses, though.
Yeah, I guess the upshot is I'm very interested to see how technology and like reforms are going to interact with succession types, because so far it looks like you can, like, if you play this country, you can just switch between these 6 as long as you get all of your powerful vassals to approve it.
That blue snake is the Medici symbol.
It's a what?
The blue snake is the Medici symbol.
So it's Italy.
On the flag with the Genoese cross and the blue snake, that's Medici.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
so maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe it's unlocked with tech, because it does say we have a number of variants on elective succession, ranging from feudal elective to princely elective.
Right.
And a handful of cultural variants. So it may be dependent upon culture, it may be dependent upon tech. We don't have enough info on that yet, I don't think.
Yeah,
Alfred and Valergate in chat think it's the HRE. Because that looks the one with the snake is probably Italian, but I think that gold one with the lion on it is like Flanders, I want to say. I could be thinking
the one with the snake. It's basically the Alfa Romeo badge flipped.
Oh, okay. So this is if you choose the Megacorp government form instead, which they're adding to CK2.
But yeah, I'm fairly sure that is some kind of Medici snake.
It's hard to tell from a little bit of the map we see in the background.
Oh yeah, the Alfred Agamede point out that looks like the Navarra flag on the far left here. So I don't know. Probably talking about some of the other stuff in this dev diary though.
But the renaming of the gender laws.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm in full agreement with you there, Rose. To be honest, like, yeah, I think one of the charms of CK2 is like, you know, you learn as you're playing it. You learn a little bit about history, you learn a little bit about succession, you learn a little bit about medieval life. You know, there's some educational values, and
it still has real world application in terms of if you like. There was a huge to do in Japan for a while, because the emperor only had his grandchildren were all female, and so they were actually it was actually purely agnatic succession there. Girls cannot inherit at all. But there was a huge talk about actually even just changing it to agnatic cognatic and letting girls inherit if there were no boys, until a boy was born, and then they threw it under the rug.
it's with the British crown now, like so it's agnatic cognatic. Well, it was until relatively recently, where now, you know, women inherit on the same grounds as men.
Yeah, it's absolute cognatic now.
Yeah, that's something really cool. I think that you can learn about that from CK2, and then even in the modern world, we still have monarchies that are changing their succession laws.
It's interesting.
I'm fairly certain there's going to be a mod very, very early on that is going to change it to historical names, and I'm fine with
as
that.
long as it doesn't break achievements, I would probably use it.
Well, I wouldn't have thought it would, right? Because it's a localization file, so I don't think localization.
Well, Imperator does.
Oh, does it?
That's for UI.
UI
things, not localization.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think you can change for localization files, and it should be all right.
Yeah, I mean this. I could change all of these if it works the same way as CK2. I could change all of these back to the old names in like 30 minutes. Like, that's not a hard thing to mod. So
we have Agamede in chat who does a lot of mods for Imperator, saying that localizations in Imperator actually do break it.
Do they?
That was my understanding. Yeah. That was my understanding, is that pretty much anything you change at Imperator will break achievements.
Oh, yeah.
Because of how Jomini works now or something like that. But hopefully they'll find a way around that, because, I really like my cosmetic mods. Although I don't really play Iron Man that often, but I know there are people who like cosmetic mods and play Iron Man, so.
Yeah, well, speaking of cosmetics too, I think that's another one. It's been a sort of long-term gripe, but I kind of think the UI is a little bit too plain. It doesn't have that panache or flair that CK2 has, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of dark, and I can see why they might go for that aesthetic. Like
it's just too simple. It's a bit too boring. There's no. Well, I can see there's a little tiny flares, but it's very underplayed. You know, you get the arches at the top. But that's about it. There's no stained glass, and the characters got quite a dull background. You know, it should be some tapestry and some fabrics. You know, or gargoyles, stained glass, all those little flares. You know, that really make a UI interesting. I think that's one of the great things about CK2's UI. Like, you click on the intrigue sign, and then you got a stained glass of some court intrigue going on, or
and I mean this is all work in progress anyway, so hopefully they'll add some more flair before it finishes up.
Fingers crossed.
We also got to look at how feudal contracts are going to work, which was another thing that was kind of a drama bomb in the comments, where it's fairly simplistic. There's low, normal, and high. All of your contracts are on an individual level with each vassal now, instead of setting them realm-wide. So, you could have the very powerful Duke of Aquitaine, who doesn't really owe you much, and then have, all the smaller counts around Paris that you have kind of a tighter grip over, which is kind of cool. They also mentioned a big change is that in a civil war, so basically when a vassal owes you troops now, they actually owe that directly out of their own troop pool. And when a civil war starts, they get all of their troops back. So that's going to make civil wars more dangerous, which is cool. As far as there only being 3 things you can click in a feudal contract, I kind of agree that that's a little bit of a bummer. I think it's probably something that patches and updates will expand upon later.
I'm fairly sure it will.
Yeah. That just seems to me like one of those things where it's like, it's a new Paradox game, so there are going to be certain things that are going to feel underdeveloped and kind of like underwhelming compared to the ones that have been out for 5 or 6 or more years.
Yeah.
What was Johan saying last week, or at another point, was that they try and do, include everything that was the original base game, and then do another 25% new content, and then evolve upon the other 25% or something?
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting. If you look at the feudal contract screen, like there's gradients and colors behind those characters. That helps a lot. With the UI.
Oh yeah, I like the that kind of.
But it should have a texture too. Gradients.
Halo,
they're nice, but
it's also.
I know whenever I do a gradient, it's because I'm just feeling a bit lazy, and I just put a gradient behind it. Put a texture on it too. Textures go a long way.
What's also interesting is that you can use a hook to get someone to agree.
Yes, and you can gain stress. You can gain stress because you're generous for raising someone's feudal obligations. So stress is not just going to be tied to event options, which is something we didn't see before.
Yeah. It would be nice if there was the... I guess so. Yeah, it definitely is.
So presumably if you're cruel and you raise it, you lose stress, right? I presume.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe,
you gain stress if you try and lower it and you're cruel.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's definitely going to be it.
What were you going to say,
It'd be
Lambert?
nice if there was a way for it to split cash and levies. Like, there should be some kind of obligation where it's like, okay, you don't have to give us so many men, but I want more of your cash. Like, that was a thing in CK2, and now it's been lumped together. That seems to be a little bit dumbing down.
Even EU4 has it. They have the enable scootage, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, on your subjects, which is something that...
Scootage.
That was something that actually happened historically, is like, okay, we're gonna pay you some extra taxes so we don't have to send our farmers to participate in your wars. especially if you had like a very rich vassal who just didn't want to be bothered with all this conquest and crusade nonsense. They could just pay to opt out. Like, here, go hire some mercenaries. Don't bother us about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. Let's see. And then rating was the other thing that we got to look at. It's going to be more of the idea is basically that you're raiding the countryside. You're not actually sieging down holdings and taking their stuff. But most importantly, they've made it so that once you start a raid, you cannot retreat until that raid is over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the divide in the the divide in the community on this, I think, is kind of between people who like to play as Vikings who don't like this change, and people who get the shit annoyed out of them by AI Vikings who do like this change.
Well, as someone who likes playing Vikings, but also gets really annoyed at the AI Vikings, and from the whole accurate historical level, I like this change. Because honestly, you enter an area and you say, hey, let's go raid the countryside. All your raiders run around. Are you really going to be able to gather them all up and get out of there by the time the army comes marching around the hill? Because you probably didn't have official scouts out. You're just running rampant and loose.
Yeah, well, so the way a Viking raid typically worked historically is like, all right, we're going to get on our boats. We're going to go land in England. We're going to find like some stable or pasture or something. We're going to steal some horses, ride to somewhere with a monastery, take their stuff, and get out before the king's army can show up to beat us up. Like, it was the logistics and the agility and speed of Viking raiding parties that allowed them to be as successful as they were. It wasn't like they were going to win a stand-up battle against the full gathered might of the Northumbrian crown or like whatever local lord. Like that rarely happened until later in the Viking era. So I can see the arguments either way. Like I can see the argument that like historically that kind of hit and run stuff you can do in CK2 is supported. But from a gameplay perspective, if you're playing as anybody who is an eligible raid target for Vikings in the early Middle Ages, it gets really annoying really fast.
I just think this is going to make it so that countries near the center of power is going to be pretty impossible to raid. This is a massive boost to France, for example. It's a boost to the Low Countries. Because, like, say, when you're raising troops there, they're going to be quite near to the Vikings. They're going to be in large numbers, and you're going to be able to beat them very, very quickly.
Okay, this actually I would not mind as much. So Starchatek in chat says, I interpreted the dev diary differently. I don't think you get movement locked while raiding, just that there's no longer a loot bar. So if you try to run away, you won't get any of the loot since you abandoned the raid before it finished. That I would be significantly less annoyed. It literally
says, during it, your army will be unable to move.
Oh, okay.
Preventing you from running away from any counter-raiding force. Yeah. So, Star, I love you, but I think you're wrong.
And
well, that would be a great compromise, though. Oh, go ahead.
Here it says 19 days left, so it looks like the place they're raiding here is like 30 days. A month to raid a place.
Depends on whether that bar's ticking up or ticking down.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean that would be a good compromise, though. I feel like is like if you abandon a raid early, maybe you only get like 50% of the loot that you've collected so far, or something like that.
I'd be totally cool with this if you said there from a historical perspective, you don't mind the change. But at the same time, from a historical perspective, the king isn't going to know that he's being raided until messengers can get from the raided area to the king. So maybe they're invisible to you for a little while after they land, and then you can go and deal with them after you realize that they're there.
I mean, that's been a problem with most Paradox games for a very long time, is that you have a lot more perfect information about what's going on in every corner of your realm than any historical ruler ever would have.
Yeah.
We could do a whole episode on
too,
like limited communication and speed of travel and stuff like that, because I do think you could make a very interesting grand strategy game with that as sort of a core challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a few points to think about that. So like we don't actually know how the raising a levy system works yet, right? We're running on the assumption that it's exactly the same as CK2. It might take a lot longer to raise a functional levy to
Also,
be able to combat the Vikings.
Don't I remember at one point they said that levies, when they will raise in the primary holding?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they'll gather in one spot, but it'll take about the same amount of time, is I think what they've said previously. Mm-hmm. It'll take about the same amount of time to gather your full army, but they will just pop up all at once instead of having to march across the map. Yeah.
If you scroll up just a little bit, you've got that rally point in Oslo, that place, and it says a bit there. Yeah, whatever. You can see there, it's like raise local raiders, and it'll take 2 days to raise them in this place. But it's like raise all armies that are closest to this particular rally point. Yes, it says as raiders, but that's because he's hovering over that one. I'm going to assume it's the same way if you're raising a local army, that they will raise close to a rally point. So if you're being raided, like surely the best way to deal with that is set a new rally point right next to where the raiders are coming from, click the raise new army, and if they're all just popping up out of nowhere, if you are the raider, then you're just, there's now an army there and now I'm dead. Like, it's going to, I don't know, I don't like it if I'm playing as a Viking, it's going to really annoy me
Except if we look down below at the map where it shows, since when you click on your raiders, you can see where has been raided. You can tell that the coastline here, looks like England, has entirely, there's Cumberland, has entirely been raided, but not the inland provinces, the inland baronies.
Right.
Which,
because those all
harder to get to.
Right. Which
it does protect a lot of the holdings for sure, because they're not on the coast.
See, we don't know how long it takes to raise an army too. So it might be the case, say if you've got 1,000 raiders and you're landing in Lindisfarne, maybe it'll take maybe 2 months to raise a functional army to a point where you can actually defeat the raiders in a heated battle, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they raise with low morale. Maybe they don't raise in full. Well,
the other interesting thing that's related to that is that whether you're a Viking or not, you can now raid further than just on your own borders. It's just that you're going to be taking, if it's more than one county away from your closest county, you'll take additional attrition. So, if you're playing as the Magyars, you could go raiding in Germany, technically. It's just that you're going to be taking a lot of attrition for being far from home without a declared war. So,
makes sense.
That's
what you want to stop with raiding, right? Like it's not the fact that you get raided occasionally that's annoying. It's the fact that you can go around as a raider and just basically be at war with a nation, right? And just raid everything about them. Exactly. That's the thing you have to prevent.
Well, that is a.
But
before we leave this topic,
but I overall quite like the change, even as a raider, right? Because it's a lot riskier to raid now. It's not just like a case where you just go out, and it's free money. When you raid, you're taking a risk, which you want.
You should probably take attrition anyway, as the monks of Lindisfarne fight back and hit you over the head with a golden cross.
Speaking of golden crosses.
No, I'm not speaking of golden cross. I'm not done. Raiding has got another thing to talk about. Every country should be able to raid. Every single country.
Yeah?
I'm going to stand by that because that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really dislike the fact that it's only pagans. I really dislike that.
Yeah.
I think the classic saying is that more Irish More Irish monasteries were sacked by Irishmen in the Viking Age than were sacked by Vikings. Because they would go around just
maybe not
raiding each
pagan,
other's
but
churches.
Barbarians. Then it needs to be more than barbarians. I
half and half agree with that, right? So it's like, on one hand, yes, it historically happened. You know, there's constant raids, especially in Britain, right? I mean, like the Welsh borders were just raid zone central. The Scottish borders were raid zone centrals. Scottish Highlander tribes raided each other constantly. But at the same time, the mindset at the time was, if we're going to part of Christianization was that they're going to stop raiding us, because if we make them into Christians, you know, they become more civilized and they stop raiding people, right? That was the idea. It wasn't true, but that was the idea, right? Like,
There's also game mechanics.
How do you like balance the mindset of the time with
like here I like, maybe it should be something like, if you're a Catholic and you're raiding other Catholics, it'll reduce your opinion with other Catholics, or it'll like give them the chance to go talk to the Pope, like, hey, this guy's raiding our monasteries. Yeah, can I get an excommunication CB on him? Like, it should be a diplomatic consequence rather than a hard code blocker.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the example I brought up in my my Dev Diary video on this was the Ottomans were raiding the Habsburgs and vice versa up until like the 1500s, 1600s. Mm-hmm. Like, there is, I don't think there is any historical argument for locking it just to pagans. No, I don't think there's any argument that exists.
Raids in force were far, far, far more common than declared wars across most 100%. Of history. Yeah,
like maybe you could make it so that the raids can escalate into full-scale war. But
like they give you a CB against someone.
Maybe it would just escalate naturally if you go and confront the raiders as well.
Yeah.
I just
or
really don't like,
you beat up the raid army and then you go raid them and then you go home. Like that's a pretty accurate description of a border conflict. Yeah. So anyway, we've talked about CK3 for like almost 40 minutes.
Well, what you're saying about going and raiding them back, at least now you destroy the raiders, you get the money back that they took.
Right.
That's good.
I love that change.
Yeah.
And you can steal back your golden cross.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot.
On the topic of golden cross, come on, I laid it out for you.
Crosses, we have the clergy and the changes to them and the rest of the estates in EU4.
Yes.
I laid it out for you.
We finally have the big estate rework that has been much talked about in EU4. Basically, instead of estates owning land, they're just going to own a percentage of your development, which is nationwide. They still have influence and loyalty modifiers that give you certain bonuses. But they've also added a system where you can call diets, where you can give them privileges, which make them happy and lower your absolutism, but give you some sort of nationwide bonus. As someone who has never really liked how estates work in EU4, I don't know that there are a lot of people who did. I love this whole slate of changes. I'm very, very happy with this.
I'm with you on
that. What do
you
guys think? Okay.
I mean, it's definitely very Mayo and Taxes-esque, and I think the more that EU4 just leans in and takes pieces out of Mayo and Taxes and put it in the base game, I think the more of that, the better. As a horrible Mayo and Taxes apologist. So, no. Well, I mean, I have to, apologize for Groogy's mental state sometimes, because anytime he looks at Mayo and Taxes, he does go a little bit more insane.
I can see why Groogy was great. Squirming last week about wanting to talk about this, because it is just an incredible change, right? I mean, it's
Pops next,
yeah, Pops, yeah. Add Pops to everything. Like, I just want Pops to every game.
Yeah.
1.4, the development overhaul.
every man a pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Each with his own agenda, each with his own culture and religion, and his own opinions on the Pope and all of it. Just populate everything.
Well, and this also kind of fits with something we were talking about a couple episodes ago in relation to Defender of the Faith. How it seems like they kind of want it to be something that becomes less important over time. Mm-hmm. They specifically said in one of the comments that estates are something that, like, once the age of absolutism hits, you kind of should be less concerned about keeping estates happy, because you kind of just want to bring everything under the central administration, which I think is great.
Build your own Versailles, and trap everyone there. Exactly.
Yeah, it's another interesting way to show how the political order and how individual countries sort of evolve over the course of the EU4 time frame, which, I mean, EU4, maybe Vicky 2 would give it a run for its money in terms of, like, the times in history that had the greatest amount of change in how governments worked. So I like that. I like that they're building that more into the game as time goes on. So
I think this more accurately represents, like, the internal politics of a nation. Like, for instance, France, they have, in the current version of EU4, France is incredibly strong. But a big part of why England was able to punch above their weight during the 100 Years' War and, like, almost win is because France was, like, shackled to the nobles, who were immensely powerful and also massive assholes. So
the reason
that's
was
why
because
we were able to.
Of a Welsh invention that was the longbow. That was one reason. There was no other reasons.
I'm saying there's more than one reason. A longbow can't shoot itself, mate.
At least a Welshman behind it.
Yeah.
I was stolen by the English.
You invented it, but you weren't strong enough to use it, so you gave it to the English.
Oh.
Stolen.
Ow. Or, the English just stole it like they stole a lot of other stuff around the world.
Well, the history of that, I'm going to just go into it.
Acquired.
It was because the Welsh beat the shit out of most of the English, like, massively in a big rebellion. And the English went, oh shit, oh damn, Welsh, we outnumber them massively, but they're kicking us ass because they got this longbow, and then they stole it and then beat up the French with it in pure English fashion.
And now it's known as the English longbow.
Yeah, that's right, exactly,
when I brought a Welshman and an Englishman on this show, I was like, oh, they'll be able to get along fine, right? It's been hundreds of years since Llewellyn the Great. Yeah.
Just me.
Well, what you didn't even realize, TJ, is my ancestry is Scottish. And so is my name, actually, but...
Oh, yeah? Okay. So...
Trust, can I just say it? Trust the Welsh invention to be the name of it starts with an L. Just the Welsh.
Yeah, it was originally spelled with two L's before the English stole it.
Longbow. Anyway, what was the point I was going to make before we had that tangent? I don't remember anymore. Crownland. Oh yeah, so I like this because it gives you another goal besides painting the map, which is something that Imperator is moving more and more towards, as we've read in previous dev diaries. Like, now it's really gonna feel like you have kind of this struggle with the estates and this struggle to centralize that is an interesting conflict that's going on within your borders in the second half of the game. And that's another thing that I really like about the way they've structured this now.
I think I was having a discussion with Radio Res, was it a week ago or so? And he was talking about how EU4 has always been a map painter. And as someone who came into the game and really, like, got to playing it a lot later, it's never really felt like a map painter to me, because there is so much to do internally, and now there's going to be even more stuff to do internally.
Yeah, I think map painting is probably the least interesting aspect of EU4 for me. I don't really like map painting that much. I understand a lot of people do.
I would say that, like, at its core, EU4 is kind of a map painting game, but it's gotten better about letting you pursue other play styles, and this Dev Diary specifically is one of the biggest steps they've taken forward to letting you pursue other play styles. 1.0 EU4, I mean, it was kind of like Imperator 1.0. There wasn't a lot to do other than colonization and conquest. But it's definitely gotten a lot better over the years, for sure.
Oh, one thing also about these estates is it'll make it easier porting CK2 games into EU4, because previously when it does that and you're a monarchy, it just sticks estates around willy-nilly that make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. Like, there were some interesting events tied to it. Like, there's that event where you can choose to give a major city to the burghers, and then it'll get, like, some production and development bonuses. Stuff like that was kind of cool, but, like, especially for smaller nations, a lot of times it just didn't end up making sense. Because you have a limited number of provinces, and now that's, like, you know, divisible by 100, right? Like, you can have ownership go up by like 1 or 2% instead of like, I have 5 provinces and I have this event says I have to give one to the clergy, so there goes 20% of my country. Like, it was very, it broke down a lot, especially if you were playing as a like a tall nation, which now it won't, because it's based on development. And
I hope
provinces.
it simulates like when Rise of a merchant class, especially in places like the Dutch Republic or China.
Oh, that'd be very interesting.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah, there was some really interesting stuff going on in the Chinese sphere with
yeah, absolutely.
Moving from sort of the Confucian idea that merchants were basically parasites because they didn't produce anything, and then, you know, they started to gain more and more power over the course of the EU4 time period. That's a really
interesting. Like, it happens with each dynasty different points. So, like in the Ming dynasty too, and then, you know, and then later on in the Qing dynasty again, and then they fell. So, you know, maybe the Confucians had it right. Who knows?
yeah, maybe. I don't know.
One thing I did see commented about down below are people asking about how many privileges you could grant. And what it looks like to me is that every time you grant a new privilege, you open up another slot for another privilege. Just from the images.
No.
Unless y'all got something different.
With the UI being so long as well, it might wrap around and be like, it'll go on to 2 lines now.
Well, and they also showed that there are some like unique ones for certain countries that will help better model their starting historical situation, like the Golden Liberty in Poland, which
France has something similar.
Yeah, there is a limit, Lambert. Groogy said there's 5 down in the comments below.
Okay. Yeah, I like stuff like this too, because that's like something that like explains why Poland did what they did and didn't do things that they didn't do at the start date that wasn't really modeled or incentivized previously.
I'd love loads of stuff like that. Like, you know, keep adding different types of privileges for China,
right?
You know, for the Mughals, for, you know, Ottomans, more unique stuff that makes each major civilization unique. And you know,
the thing, like, I like this so much. I like this so much better than the faction system that I kind of wish they would roll factions for countries that use factions into this system instead.
Yes,
There's certainly space for it.
Yeah, because factions feel so outdated compared to this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, factions, it's an invention of EU3, isn't it? It's pretty much the China mechanic from EU3. Yeah.
Right.
Roll it into
like, I feel like I'm going to be disappointed playing as a country that has factions because the estate system is so much more detailed and there's so much more you can do with it.
There's a lot more interest
100%,
in it.
Yeah.
It does also allow them to more accurately, you know, represent countries' starting positions. Like you said about Poland, France has got one, you know, now that France has all of its vassals again. The one of their Golden Liberty style, I can't remember what exactly it's called, but their privilege that they've granted out gives them some more diplo relation slots, you know, so that they can handle their vassals. So it just, I think every country could, if they looked hard enough at the, you know, the situation of the country, every country could probably get some kind of privileges unique to them. Yeah, that they start with, or potential to get as well.
And I think EU4 is at its best when it tries to do that. When it tries to look at the historical situation of a specific country and think about, okay, if I'm sitting down and I'm your average video game player, and I have these goals that I want to achieve that are, have to deal with the historical realities of what challenges these specific leaders were actually facing. How do we model that? How do we make it so the player has to contend with the fact that like X did not happen historically because of Y? That I think it makes every country in the game more unique, more interesting and fun to play. It increases, the diversity between I'm starting as this German bishopric versus this other German bishopric or whatever.
Yeah.
Love stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got 3 more dev.
Yeah, speaking of historical and ahistorical, they did some tweaks to the focus trees in Hoi 4.
Yes. So we've got some more industry for certain paths in the Spanish Civil War that did not get a lot previously, with the exception of if you go democratic and you don't accept help from the Soviets, which they've said basically your independence at the end of the war is your reward for that. So they don't get as much of a boost. But yeah, they've made a lot of changes to like the Stalinist path, to the is it the independent communist path?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember which ones they actually tweaked the most.
There's the Carlist, so
Carlists, yeah. So yeah, they've added some more ways for them to ramp up industry, which is cool.
Yeah.
The change I was most excited to see is where was it? I should write the stuff down before we start recording, because I see it in the dev diary. And
far
I'm like,
too professional.
Man, I want to talk about that, and then like in the middle
changes
of
to
actually
the French monarchists, maybe like the French monarchists have had some additional industry.
Yeah,
focuses.
they got some cool stuff added. Oh yeah, it's this part. So the death before surrender focus expires by default in 1939. Because man, in this patch, I have seen some Spanish civil wars because of that unplanned offensive modifier that just drag on forever. They went too far in the other direction, so now they've implemented a way. It's kind of a heavy-handed way, in my opinion, but yeah, it kind of is like, all right, if one side clearly has the upper hand in 1939, the other side will just be like, all right, you win. We're tired of this. So
we're hungry. We want to go home. We need a siesta.
They've gone to a lot of like specific detail to make the Spanish War be able to play out sort of historically in a game that maybe doesn't necessarily model that specific conflict too well. And the level of like very granular meddling they've had to do that. I've said in previous episodes, I wonder if maybe it wouldn't be better to just re-examine some of the core mechanics to see if there's a better way to make that happen instead of having all these like really specific triggered modifiers. But at the same time, it's like, do we want to upend the fundamentals of the entire Hearts of Iron formula just to make the Spanish Civil War work right? Probably not. So
especially when the game is all about World War II, and like we said, the Spanish didn't really take a whole lot of part in that.
Yeah, well, I said, like at the time, I remember when it was first being suggested of these modifiers, right? It's hard to make a game with both models. The German Blitzkrieg, the Spanish Civil War, and also the Sino-Japanese War, which dragged on, which you really see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the momentum of all those wars was completely different.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's a difficult problem. I recognize that, and I recognize that my thoughts about it are probably things Paradox has thought about too, and decided to go this route. So, I'd love to see a war game in the vein of Hearts of Iron that was kind of built from the ground up to better model these sort of less conventional conflicts.
Yeah.
That would definitely be cool. I'd play that game.
Famously, like, Hearts of Iron does a terrible job at like handling guerrilla warfare, for example, when it's all about line combat and things.
Yep, it's very based on line combat.
Very good World War One simulator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shame that World War One mod isn't really updated. So it was pretty.
Yeah, the Great War mods, seemed like it kind of fell off the face of the earth. Even that had some issues. Like the Eastern Front never worked that well in the Great War mod, unfortunately. It modeled the Western Front pretty well.
Yeah. It modeled very well because it was like static, right?
Yeah, well that's the
no
thing.
One moves. Done.
Yeah. we discussed this at one point with the 3 Moves Ahead crew that like why hasn't there been many World War One strategy games? Like we were talking about the possibility of like a World War One Total War, and it's like because nothing happens most of the time. Like you would almost have to set it up in a way with like static fronts where like when you move an army in, that represents a breakthrough, not a battle. Like you're attempting a breakthrough at this specific point, and then like you just put the game on max speed until you can attempt to break through again. Like, hey, we're gonna try poison gas this time, or like, hey, we invented the tank. Let's see what we can do with this. But it's
half of them broke down before reaching the front.
Right.
And then what was it? It worked for a while. They pushed the front back forward quite a bit, and then because they didn't follow it up with
it was
pretty much
the
anything.
front just broke through.
That was the sound of a Mark V breaking through the front.
And then the Germans took it all back within like a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, there's stuff like, move and fire tactics. When those were developed, that made a big difference. But there's also the issue, which they kind of model in Hearts of Iron 4 a little bit with like generals that have like the old guard trait. But like the commanders at the beginning of World War I were just completely incompetent. And it's like, how do you model that fact that like the player knows how warfare developed from 1914 onward if they're educated about military history, which you probably are if you're playing a World War I strategy game. But then,
in your second game,
but then it's like, do you use a doctrine system? Do you give them major penalties for not being able to implement smart tactics until you've realized that the dumb tactics don't work? Like that's kind of an interesting design challenge in and of itself.
Well, this is going to be a huge challenge for whenever Victoria 3 happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking about the change in the time period for that.
If it's not a
going
myth.
From it's going to happen eventually.
It's going to happen.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it will.
It is as inevitable as Merchant Republics in CK3.
It's just how many other games they come out before we do Victoria 3.
So World War I generals, like I mentioned, they tried a bunch of dumb ideas before they figured out the good ideas, which is also kind of what's going on with the development of Stellaris' AI right now. We got a big dev diary on how they've changed the way fleets work, notably not in the released version of the release day version of Federations. This is going to be coming a little bit later. Just kind of how AI choose how to allocate their fleet power. But probably more importantly, the economic AI now looks at the entire empire as an economic entity instead of just deciding what to build on each specific planet to try to reduce deficits. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the Stellaris AI has been really bad at economy for a long time, and this seems like if it works as intended, it's going to be a huge step up.
No more. You're not longer going to find a situation where you're going to conquer.
You are incorrect there, TJ. We have Moa in chat telling us the AI changes are in the release day version, but not all the bug fixes are.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay. I thought from reading the dev diary, what it said was that the military AI changes would not be in the release version, but the economic ones would, but I could be wrong about that.
Well, you were wrong about the time we started earlier too. So.
Yeah, I mean,
he has a habit of that.
I mean, redacted. But so we'll see how that goes. I have nothing to say at this time about the military AI in Stellaris, as it may or may not stand. So yeah, that's great. Obviously, if that's going to make it into release, I'll be very happy. I'll be very curious to see how this translates to things like, are the AI finally going to be more aggressive now that they can manage their economy a little bit better? Because I feel like that's been a problem with Stellaris since 1.0, is that if you don't set the AI to aggressive in the game setup, they don't like actually attack you often enough.
Both AIs are in, but the military AI has more changes coming in the day one patch.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So those of us that will be participating in the event this weekend will likely not see the full military AI.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Rose and Lambert. Do you want to talk about the invitation that has been extended to you a little bit?
Yeah. We're on the same team.
Yes, we are on the same team with the Spiff and Brit, though on Saturday he will be played by Stefan Anon.
Yeah.
So we
can't really talk too much about it, but basically, birds rule supreme, and that's all I got to say about everything, really.
Birds, roses, and tea merchants.
Brits.
Literally is tea merchants.
Yeah.
Oh my god, they're called Megacore tea merchants or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
nice. Well, so they're calling it the content creator Cold War. We know that much. What are the dates and times as far as when that's all going to be going on?
It's this weekend. For me, it's 4 p.m. So, like 2 p.m. British time, and whatever the hell that is on your time.
I believe,
and it's going to be for 4 hours.
Let me double check what I put. It starts at 10 a.m. Eastern time here.
There we go.
Is that on Saturday
and Sunday?
Saturday and Sunday. So that's going to be the 14th and the 15th.
Yeah, it's 2 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. CET, 10 a.m. ET, and 7 a.m. PT. Just lots of. I'm just going to put that in chat. Screw all the rest of it.
The fact that y'all over in Europe haven't actually changed your time yet, and we have here in the States, is just causing all sorts of issues.
See, why don't we all just agree to not change the times at all ever again?
I lived with that for 5 years in South Korea. It was great. It was absolutely wonderful.
I'm submitting a proposal to the Galactic Senate right now, so everybody just go ahead and express your support for that we're not going to change time zones in the middle of the year anymore.
All of Stellaris is running on GT, right? Galactic time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bring back metric time. Bring it back.
Didn't that last for like a couple of years under Napoleon, and then everyone realized it was a terrible idea?
No, Napoleon got rid of it. It was the first revolutionaries that did it. But now it's beautiful. Oh, you should see the calendar. It's great. It's wonderful. Time. It's in units of 100. It's lovely. Beautiful. Everything should be metric. Make everything metric.
So show up, support our affiliated empires. We appreciate your
which team you have to cheer
backing in this great challenge. Oh yeah, who else is going to be there? Nobody cool.
We
right?
have
come on.
A-Spec, Gaming FTL,
Lame.
Old Man More Dave,
Lame.
Obsidian Ants,
Lame.
Dark Insanities, Karumba, Max the Catfish,
Scrub.
No Virtue, Witch Streamer.
I can't condone this.
I love you guys. I do.
It's like, hey, this bridge right
awesome
here,
people.
let's set it on fire.
Please, you're all lame and you're all scrubs. Please come on our podcast.
Yeah, you're just like, You're just like,
anytime,
okay, so all
doors
these people
open.
that are playing, none of them are coming on.
No. But yeah, I'll be in chat to support our NoCB co-hosts. So, yeah, cool stuff. Anything else about this dev diary that you guys wanted to mention before we close off with Imperator?
I'm looking forward to conquering a planet and not having to rip down every single building that they've built and redoing it from the ground up, because that's a real problem with the current version of the game. Like, I really get it.
Oh man, like every time I conquer a new planet, I feel like they just were like that kid pointing at the butterfly meme, like, is this an economy? It's like, no, this is not.
Well, they're all living in a dystopia because they need so many precinct houses. It's unreal.
yeah. It's just every world is like Judge Dredd world. That's it.
Exactly. Like, there's more people employed as like security officers than any other profession. Yeah. So a wise man once said, if someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. And Imperator is now giving us a way to do that. This dev diary was kind of about, they showed off sort of the pan-Hellenic ideas for a lot of the other Hellenic miners that are getting mission trees in Magna Graecia, but the part that was most interesting to me is that you can now deify your rulers and actually unlock an imperial cult government form if you fill all of your slots with former rulers. Obviously, Alexander being one of the prime examples of this, which, man, I think this is going to be fun. What do you guys think?
Tell you what, I just love the little flourish around the icons. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Mm-hmm. Look at that.
It is.
Lovely.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm not in two minds. I love it, but I'm in two minds of what I'm going to do with it. I'm either going to find all of the vanity characters that I can and deify them, or I'm going to name my first child Lambert, and I'm going to have Lambert be, the god that we deify in my country. And that's going to be the case for every single playthrough.
You know who you have to deify first, though? Since you did do that lovely video about?
Yeah,
Rod.
We need to flog and god Rod.
Yes. Also, where's the achievement for flogging Rod? Because I don't think we've gotten it yet,
we were told there were going to be one. And I did it, and then it didn't get an achievement. It's rude.
They've never given us that achievement. It's been almost a year.
In fairness, they've never given us any extra achievements at all. And it's getting to the point where I kind of want some more.
Are you running out?
Well, I've still got a few runs that I can still do, but I think I'm at 38 out of 50. So, just throw me another 20 or so.
Nice.
The tweet may have gone below 10k retweets, but it was above 10k retweets at one point.
Oh, yeah.
And it was caught on stream, and there's video footage of it. So, come on, we need the achievement to flog Rod. It's required.
If you want, you can show my video on it as well, because it was.
Quite well done.
I'm really proud of the music lining up so perfectly.
Let's say that hypothetically, there's someone in the audience who doesn't know what you guys are on about right now.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, that's fair.
What is the backstory behind Flog Rod?
Well, Rod was the community manager for Imperator during the development of it. And, well, his name, Rod, sort of rhymes quite closely to flog. Or it doesn't rhyme, but it flog Rod. It flows got, nicely. It has a ring to it, a certain panache.
Assonance? Is that when the vowels match up?
And it became a very big deal to blame him for everything during the dev clash last year.
Yes.
Yes.
And
so every time something was
he's a vanity
wrong,
character
you had to flog
in the
Rod.
game. Yeah, And he's a vanity character in the game, and he said he was not going to tell anyone where he was. He wasn't one of the easy ones to find, like Johan or the other Johan, who are probably the two easiest ones to find. I found him and I flogged him to death and made a video on it.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Goldenrod is a suburb of Novgorod.
It is now. Yeah, sure.
Nice. We also got an answer about some of the questions we've had about Judaism in this dev diary as well. So basically, their deity slots are going to be filled by famous prophets.
Brilliant.
And then if your religion has the monotheist tag, you cannot ever adopt deities that are not of your religion.
Perfect.
So
I love it.
That answers that question.
Seems like a good solution.
Hopefully it applies to Buddhism too, Zoroastrianism.
What I'm wondering is
no, you can't, right? Because it's
I don't know,
Ahura Mazda or something. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, if you're playing as a Jewish or like a Zoroastrian realm, could you make a prophet of a character who was alive during your playthrough?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so Christianity would eventually be in the game. You just have to do it yourself. That'd be the easiest way to do it, though. Really.
I mean, you'd have to create some kind of a schism at some point.
Civil war. We like Jesus versus we don't like Jesus.
Not all Jewish people, obviously, accepted him
that
as
took
a
couple,
prophet,
100 years to get.
I don't think any Jewish person did. I think that's
a lot of the early Christians were Jewish converts. It's just that people who are still Jewish now are descended from the ones who did not.
DIY Christianity. Jesus.
Although there are also Messianic Jews who are Jews that do recognize either Jesus or somebody else as the Messiah.
Really? I didn't know
that has already happened. Yeah, so... But then they, follow.
But it wasn't this Jesus. It was a different Jesus.
Not Jesus of Nazareth. That guy was a poser.
He was just some Colombian called Jesus, Yeah. In the 1950s or something.
But then so the other thing we got to look at is that most minor Hellenic nations are going to get their own semi-generic tree where they can kind of create a league based on the region they're in and eventually unite Greece either as a single country or as a confederation of regions, which will be great because not everyone is getting the same level of attention as Athens, Sparta, and Syracuse, but they are going to have some unique stuff just for being Greek, which is
pretty
great.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the one that you get for being Massalia or Emporion. Those are going to be interesting ones. Reclaiming Alalia is going to be a goal for sure.
Yeah.
Forming the Phocian League. Because especially the flag for the Phocian League, it's beautiful. It's just fantastic.
Can you make the Lesbian League as Lesbos? That's what I want to know.
I don't know.
And here we go. That would be okay. There we go. Yeah, it's got a griffin on it. That would be cool.
I'd really quite like that.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what all the different league names end up being. Yeah. Anything else about this dev diary before we wrap up?
I think it's worth mentioning that you can only turn your previous rulers into gods if you have the Magna Graecia content pack.
Oh yeah,
that is paid only, which I am fine with, honestly, because the DLCs, the things you pay for, have to have something more to them, because there are people out there that don't like mission trees. They just think they're railroady, or they don't like them, and their complaints about them, while I do like mission trees, their complaints are still valid. It is purely opinion based. So you need to draw these people in as well. There's people that really like Imperator, love Imperator, but don't like mission trees. And for them, Magna Graecia before this was an empty DLC. Yeah, it's just mission trees. So adding more to it is good. And I think this is... It's mechanics, yes, but it's not overarching mechanics that will, lock people out from a huge swath of the game if they don't own the DLC, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good thing to put in the DLC.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, it'll also. I'll also be interested to see how this plays out with some of the barbarian realms. There's a theory. It's not like a super well accepted theory. It's kind of a fringe theory, but it's an interesting one that like possibly some of the Norse gods who are worshipped in the Viking Age might have been great kings who ended up becoming deified at some point in history. So it'd be cool if you had, King Thor, and then he becomes the god Thor, over the course of your playthrough. That would be kind of a fun way to do.
This is my new headcanon. I accept this theory as true.
Well, there's Epona the horse goddess. There's a pretty good book by Morgan Lillewin that she usually
was
does
Welsh? There was too many L's in there for it not to be Welsh.
Yeah, she's Welsh. She usually does Welsh or Irish historical fiction. But she did one that was set during Imperator times with the early Celts. And Epona was a real person who ended up bringing, well, even before Imperator times, and brought steppe horses to the Celtic tribes. And it's actually set way before Imperator. In that the Celts were just a single little village at the time. And with the horses that she brought back, conquered everything. And she became a goddess for it.
That's a cool idea.
You don't find Epona in the steppes. You find Lon Ranch. You find that's where she resides.
I mean, Hyrule Field is kind of a steppe if you look at the climate and the terrain. Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah.
Look up Deigenesis, DEI, and then Genesis. If you're interested in that theory at all. I'll include a link in the description or something. Yeah.
How does Hyrule survive? It's got one ranch, hasn't it? That's it. There's no other farms that I know of.
Yeah, the economics of any Zelda game don't really make a lot of logical sense. There's usually like one or two
Lon Ranch has just got a complete monopoly on the entire food supply of
exactly
Hyrule.
Yeah, why? Yeah, why is his name Ingo who takes over the ranch?
I think so, yeah.
He could basically make himself a baron and then probably eventually the king because he has such a control over the food supply. What's Zelda gonna do? Like, what is Ganon gonna do? He lives in the desert. They don't have any arable land. Like, come on, this world building is just bullshit.
Absolutely, and all they produce is milk. All people in Hyrule live on just pure milk.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Without the milk supply, that's it. The society collapses.
The description of this book actually gives it a better time frame. Troy is in crumbling ruin, and Athens is rising far to the south.
Got it.
So it's like the collapse of the collapse of the Greek Bronze Age kind of area.
And
the Greek Golden Era. Yeah,
it's the Scythians she gets the horses from.
Interesting, cool stuff.
With the Scythians, aren't they theorized to be the Amazons, like where the myth came from?
So the weird thing about the term Scythian is that the Romans used it to describe a lot of people on their borders that weren't related at all.
They were just miscellaneous.
I mean, Scythian was almost as vague as barbarian. So
barbarian just meant foreigner.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not vague at all. It's just everyone that isn't me.
Fair enough. Yeah, the royal Scythians are kind of like the proper Scythians. They're the ones we kind of, as history game fans, think about when we think about Scythians as a, nomadic horse kingdom or whatever. But yeah, what was the original question? I'm on a lot of deadlines right now. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep in the last couple of days.
If that's where the Amazons came from, but
I think you might be right. Yeah, that sounds familiar. So that's Imperator. That's our show for the week. Before we get out of here, Rose, where can people find your stuff, and what have you been up to? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your? Can you tell us about your empire in the Cold War yet?
I don't think we're supposed to. There'll be more information about that later.
Got it. So what else have you been up to then?
What else? Let's see. Here on Twitch, I've been playing some RimWorld. I'm going to play Portal for the very first time tomorrow.
You've never played Portal? Portal's amazing.
Wow.
I've watched people play it, but I never actually played it. Just chalk it down to when it came out. I was really busy with university and wasn't playing any games at all. So
basically, all you need to know is the cake is actually not a lie.
Oh, I know the cake is a lie.
No, but the cake isn't actually a lie at all. It's real. It's in the game. Shit, I've just spoiled it. Never mind.
I think it's not a spoiler for when did Portal come out?
Like, yeah, no,
over 10-year-old.
Like,
yeah, the game came out a long time ago.
So have you played?
It holds up really well.
Yeah, both 1 and 2. I think 1's better, but 2 is also.
I didn't play 2. I've played 1.
2 is good.
2 is fantastic.
Yeah, it's well worth it. Yeah.
And then also over on YouTube, I'm involved in a Venetian EU4 Succession series with Lambert and 3 others, as well as playing the new indie game Yes, Your Grace, which is definitely very interesting.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to trying that out. I haven't gotten it yet. But.
This other one is sort of like, it looks like it's an anime rubbish game, but it turns out that's Long Live a Queen.
Yes, Your Grace, it feels like those Sierra adventure games from the 90s. Like King's Quest and Torrens Passage and stuff. Yeah. Is what it feels like, but the mechanics are quite different. It's very interesting. I'm about maybe halfway through, a third of the way through. I'm not entirely sure.
It kind of reminds me of Dragon Age Origins Awakening, the expansion for the first Dragon Age, where you would kind of have like petitioners that would show up at your castle and present you with dilemmas.
That's part of it. I always
thought, like Sims Medieval.
Yeah, like that would be an interesting, if that was just the whole game, that would be kind of an interesting idea.
It's got a real story to it. I'm not sure how it's going to be with replayability, but it's definitely very interesting the first time through.
No, it sounds right up my street.
Cool.
Check that out.
Lambert, what have you been up to and where can people find your stuff?
I'm on dlive.tv/Lambert2191 and youtube.com/Lambert2191 as well. And recently, just yesterday, in fact, started a new series where I'm doing a co-op campaign with Vespasian, where he's playing as Rome and I'm playing as Byzantium, and we're going to try and form the Eastern and Western Roman empires with, like, the max extent of the borders. Then when we've done that, we're going to murder each other. So that should be fun. I think actually the first video of that comes out tomorrow. So we've done one session, and I think it's probably going to be a good series because stuff happened. It's good.
So it's good to hear that stuff happened. I don't really like watching stuff where stuff doesn't happen.
I can understand that.
Don't watch what? Yeah. You don't like watching grass grow?
Well, sometimes I do fall asleep to there's like a Netflix series called Moving Art, which is just like nature shots with like relaxing music over it. So I guess sometimes I do like watching stuff where stuff doesn't really happen. But yeah. Loris, what have you been up to and where can people find your stuff?
Chapelcomic.com. That's where you can find me. I've been working on commissions still. Just finished one big one for Anno, so look out for that in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
I'm also finishing up on another big project, which is hopefully going to be pretty good.
Yeah, we were commiserating about deadline pressure before the show started.
I got one part of this project deadline tomorrow, so it's an all night for me now. So
yeah. I'm working on a very hefty, a chonker of a review right now that I can't talk about yet, but you'll never see it coming. And I also, my review of Romance of the Three Kingdoms 14 should be going up on PC Gamer pretty soon. You can usually find most of my stuff on my Twitter, which is AsaTJ, ASATJ. And I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. We'll see you guys back here, same time, same place, next Wednesday.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah, you can find us on iTunes. We are on Stitcher now. Someone on Twitter corrected me that they never sent us an email that we had been added to their database, but apparently we were. So Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, we should be there. If there's not
YouTube.
Well, don't talk to me about YouTube, but if there's something besides YouTube where you want to see our stuff, let us know on Twitter, NoCBcast, and we'll submit the feed so you can download us wherever you prefer to. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.
And remember to wash your hands.
Yeah.
Yes, wash your dang hands.
Wash your hand, touch your face a lot. Kiss as many people as you can.
Don't buy so much toilet paper, really. You need it, but you don't need all of it.
But if you don't have any toilet paper, what are you going to eat, Lambert? Think about it.
This pregnant lady would like to argue the need of toilet paper, but...
bit of toilet paper on toast to sustain you.
In that case, I think you're...
Oh, God.
The amount of toilet paper you could buy and have it be reasonable is definitely higher in that case than in others. But if you have enough toilet paper to actually build a fortress out of, then you have too much toilet paper. So,
although if you are building a fortress, toilet paper does actually work pretty well.
All right.
We should just go.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay healthy.
Wash your hands.
With toilet paper.
And dry them with toilet paper.